us what you desire us to do. So surprise us with the use of these funds. Guide us and direct us, inspire us, that we might in fact respond in such a way that what we have given today and each Sunday and other times during the year will be used to build your kingdom of peace, of love, of joy, and of life. Amen. Amen. You may be seated. Now, I've drawn two words from Jesus that are found in the Gospel of John. And the men's Bible study has been studying various of the books in the Old and New Testament. And I've come to discover that the Gospel of John is a much more philosophical and a theological book. As you may recall, he starts with the words, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God." And it becomes from then on, including then when you add the book of Revelation, a pretty theological and intense description of the nature of God and of Jesus. And yet at the same time, John has these wonderful words about how we're to relate to one another. Hear these words, one coming from the 13th chapter and the other from the 14th. "Commandment I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. If you love one another, then all will know that you are my disciples." And then his next one is also wonderful. "If you love me, you will obey my commandments. I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper, the Spirit of truth, to stay with you forever." I want to add this verse then. "The world cannot receive him because it cannot see him or know him, but you do know him, for he remains with you and lives in you." Well, relationships have generated host and perhaps millions of books and self-help guides and movies and articles and suggestions as to how to live your life more comfortably and more peacefully and more in relationship with one another. So we've had all kinds of guides and assistance. It's very clear that Jesus makes it pretty simple. The way to have a relationship with the world in which we live is to love that world, to love it with all your heart, with all your spirit, with all your mind, and all of who you are. And when you do that, if your relationship with others is a love relationship, that is to say, respectful and caring and kind, and not angry and hostile and hateful, that indeed, when that is done as a result of your faithfulness to God and your commitment to Jesus, then people will see that, they will hear that, they will experience it, and they'll wonder what you're up to. They know what you're up to. In time, they'll discover that you're doing because you follow Jesus. Now, today in the United Methodist Church of Calendars, this is Human Relations Sunday. And it's a Sunday for us to take a look at how we relate to one another. Now, some would say that the two scriptures that I read were meant for the disciples. And at other points in the reading of some of the epistles or the letters that went out to the various churches, Paul and others encouraged the church to be kind and gentle and caring and thoughtful to their fellow church members. But it's clear to me that Jesus is asking for more than we merely be kind to this congregation of people, or that I only be kind to United Methodist, or that I only be thoughtful and kind to Christians. Now, it's clear to me that the world is hurting, and you all know that to be the case as well. And sometimes when you're either on your cell phone looking at the news, you turn it off because you've had enough of it. Or if you're watching your television, one more newscast about the horror of what's going on in the world is just too much, and you turn it off. And you don't want to hear about those things, but the fact of the matter is, unless we listen to what's happening in the world today, we have no idea who to pray for and who to respond to who have needs and who need people to pay attention to them. So I want to do a quick review, and it's only a small review of what's going on. You're aware of the attacks that have been increased over the past year or more against Asian people. Those attacks, for instance, caused the death of a 61-year-old woman in New York City who she and her husband had moved to New York to be with friends, and was outside of her friend's house sweeping the sidewalk. An unprovoked, a 33-year-old man came up with a large rock and smacked her in the head several times, knocked her out. She ended up in the hospital after 3 months of barely living off of the instruments of medicine. She died. Why, you ask? Why would someone just walk up to a woman who was doing nothing but cleaning the sidewalk with her broom and kill her? I don't know. Or if you will pay attention to this, last year, 2002, 735 mass shootings occurred in the United States, killing 762 people, wounding 2,902 persons, and traumatizing, I tell you, traumatizing perhaps forever, family members, little children who were in the classrooms when it happened, others who were in other settings and just on the street or at a funeral or at a wedding or at a picnic. Traumatized and unable to get rid of that anxiety and fear that it might just happen again. Why? Why do people just decide to kill at random? Because they're angry, because they're bitter, because they want to get even with somebody, but they kill at random. We've heard the testimony this last November from the director of the DOVE program, which is a program that responds to the needs of people, particularly women and children who have been abused in their homes. And interestingly enough, we had a phone call during our ad council meeting that Martha took. It was a woman who was saying, I need help. I'm afraid to stay in my home. She lives up in the Hurley area. And we directed her to Dove and said, they do have a program for you. Hopefully she'll go. Why? Why? Why is it that people become so angry in their relationships that they hit one another and abuse one another and physically and sexually assault those who are most vulnerable? And that's not the only of the society in which we live who are oftentimes abused and harmed and identified as sinful, who have discovered that their bodies are different and that who they are is different from others with whom they live or with whom they have friendships. I had a young person say to me recently, what does the church say about people who are different? And I said, well, some churches say they're sinners. And some people say that what they are doing is sinful. And some people love them and care about them and do not question whether they love somebody who was of the same sex or gender. But why would we pick on? Why would we abuse? Why would we kill someone who has discovered that their body is different? Now, if we listened to Jesus, we wouldn't do that. And we wouldn't make decisions and make judgments about people based on our prejudices. And sometimes our prejudices, which are really quite filled with bigotry. And why would we bully somebody because they're different? Or the number of children in our schools who are often bullied because they are short or heavy or wear glasses or have strange haircuts. Or why would we bully them because they are struggling educationally? And why would they be bullied because they're part of a different community or a different racial background? Why would we do that? Why? Now, maybe Mahatma Gandhi is correct. They've been taught to hate. They've been taught to hate. I must confess that as much as I loved my mother and as much as I respected her, we had a housing situation where the upper level of the house in Oshkosh, we had converted to student housing. And my mother would rent to a Black student if the Black student came from Africa. But if it was somebody who came from Milwaukee or Racine or anywhere in the United States, she would always tell them, "Oh, I should have taken the sign down, we are full." And I confronted her and I said, "Mother, you can't do that. These are young people who are gifted enough and skilled enough and intelligent enough to be in a university, and they want to develop an education. They need a place to stay. Why not? Why not rent to them?" I didn't change her. Not sure why. Not sure why. But if we listen to Jesus and we listen to the words of the New Testament, in particular, again, John, God so loved the world. Now, God didn't just love white folks or Black folks or Asian folks. God didn't just love Democrats or Republicans or independents or people who don't vote at all. God doesn't just love United Methodists or World Methodists. God doesn't just love Lutherans or Catholics or Muslims or Jews or Buddhists. God so loved the world. That's what John says. God so loved the world that God gave of himself. Gave of himself. The words that came to the disciples came at a time when they were really afraid. And they were afraid not only because Jesus was announcing that he would be leaving, but they were afraid because they were under great stress and strain as a result of the opposition that had been coming toward them. What will happen to us? What will happen to us? And Jesus says, well, I am the way. How do we know the way? I am the way, the truth, and the life. If you believe in me, follow me. And they still wanted to know where he was going. Where are you going? I'm going to the Father. But, he says, I will see to it that another helper will come to you. Now, sometimes when I'm writing a sermon, I say to myself, where am I going with this? Where am I going with this? And the question might well be raised, where is Jesus going with his instruction to his disciples? And what he's saying to them is love one another and love the world. Love the people you meet. Respond to them with compassion and sensitivity. And when they see that love, they will know you are my disciple. If you show hate, is implied in his statement, they'll know you're not. Another John writes in the New Testament, the letter to the church, and he says, if you claim you know God and that you love God, then you will love your brother and your sister. And John is referring to the whole world. So, where am I going with this? I'm saying to each of us, we can't fix the whole world, but we can fix who we are, and we can fix where we are. We can fix what we think, we can fix what we say, and we can fix what we do. This is Human Relations Sunday. And what we are asking is for God's helper, God's Spirit of truth, to be with us day in and day out, week in and week out, throughout the rest of our lives. That indeed, wherever we are, we bring our minds of love, we bring our words of love, we bring our acts of love. And in so doing, wherever we are, we can at least change our encounters with one another, our relationships with the world that we know and where we live. That is the call of Jesus, as I understand it, that we love one another and that God will give us the Spirit, the helper, the counselor, the advisor to assist us in that process. I ask you to go in peace. Go with me as we go into this community and wherever we happen to be, and demonstrate with our love that we are Jesus' disciples. To do less would be a tragedy. Amen.